Hello, everybody. Well, we are back today with a session that I am very, very excited about. Our next presentation is by Will Schweitzer. He's the Chief Product and Customer Success Officer at Silverchair, and he came to Silverchair after a very successful career in publishing, starting at Lippincott Williams and Wilkins, went to the American Psychological Association, spent some time with Sage Publishing, and then finally, where many of you might know him from, the American Association for the Advancement of Science. He, as the Chief Product and Customer Success Officer at Silverchair, is responsible for customer success, product, and marketing functions. And today he's going to talk to us about Zero Data. And I'm sure you're going to have lots of questions for him. So please go to the Q&A tab and ask your questions, and I will join you to ask Will your questions when he's done. Will, take it away.
Oh, thank you very much, Anne. Just 1 second to share my screen here. Minimize everything. Okay, I hope that's set up right. As Anne mentioned in that very lovely introduction, I'm Will Schweitzer. I'm Silverchair's Chief Product and Customer Success Officer. And despite where I work, I think it's important to share that I'm not a technologist. I'm a reforming publisher. And my experience gives me a somewhat unique perspective on publishing, data, and technology. And with those introductions out of the way, I'd like to set some expectations for these next 30 minutes. I have 10 slides. I've promised not to pitch my products. I've already admitted I'm not a technologist, so there won't be any kind of techno-wizardry that'll solve all your problems here. I'm also not a marketer. And importantly, there's a place in my presentation where you'd expect to see a case study, but there isn't one. Sorry about that in advance. But what I hope to do today is share some insights and thoughts about marketing and publishing technology that can inform your product and publishing strategies. Just a few things to get you thinking. So what exactly am I talking about? Zero-party data. Very simply, zero-party data is information an author, member, subscriber, or reader purposefully gives you. Users sharing their data is an incredibly common and long-running practice. Society members frequently share information about their academic or practice disciplines. Readers will share content topics they're interested in. What is changing in this context is how we can use marketing technology to make this data actionable, as well as some of the laws and policies and user expectations around their data and how publishers can use it. Now, I know talking about data is scary territory. You've probably murmured GDPR under your breath, and you might be breaking into a cold sweat. To be honest, I'm still processing my trauma from the 2010 Canadian anti-spam law. And beyond this, the thought of buying user data or your personal data being sold is problematic. Icky, even. So that's why I'm focusing in on zero-party data, and to some extent first-party data, which includes data gained from user sessions, such as what they click on, download, or purchase. On most scholarly content hosting platforms, zero and first-party data is used today for on-site personalization or content recommendations, to improve search results, or to send custom alerts or emails. And doing this doesn't require the dark arts or black boxes. And if you haven't encountered this in our market, you certainly have when you've read your favorite popular magazine online or any major metro newspaper on your phone. What does this look like? How can publishers capture zero-party data? You can ask users to register or sign in. You can ask users to tell you what topics they're interested in reading with select modals, or type terms tied to a classification scheme or taxonomy. You can ask users to provide a bit more information about themselves to continue reading, or to sign up for an email newsletter. These are all relatively simple asks which amount to something seemingly primitive, a value exchange between the publisher and her reader. Now, I hope most folks watching this presentation are in the extraordinary position of publishing incredibly useful content. Your brands are trusted. And while most of you may be a step removed from your ultimate purchaser, as a publisher, you deliver enough value to your end user to make asks of them. By the way, this is a fish and chips cart in Oregon, and is not the best image to use if you haven't eaten breakfast. So what do I mean by these asks and making asks of your user? There are a lot of asks a publisher can make, and there's a lot of value publishers can provide to users in return. We've just talked about the easier ones, asking a user to register or sign in or identify topical interest, to sign up for a newsletter, and there's a few more here on the screen. And there's a lot that you can provide in return that can save users time, reduce the effort to find the content they want, allow them to share content with colleagues, or even have access to enhanced content or article publishing charge discounts. This isn't a new concept. Many of these asks and offers have been tried in scholarly publishing for years. In fact, there's two up here that have been kind of the bane of my existence, both as a publisher and a platform provider. For many decades, society journals would restrict publish ahead of print content access or downloading kind of pre-configured PowerPoint figure slides to members. There may still be a few that do this. What is new and what has changed in our market now is user behavior, the maturity of our products and technology, and the ease or cost of making these asks and offers. We now have analytics tools that give us a far richer understanding of our users and how they interact with our content than ever before. We have vastly improved user experiences. There's marketing technology that is easy to implement and allows us to make less intrusive asks of our user than a hard paywall. Registering or even paying for content, regardless of the market segment, whether it's trade media or newspapers, or even in scholarly publishing, is increasingly common and accepted. Our users have big jobs to do. They're overloaded with information, they're stressed, and now they're often without the institutional support or resources that make finding, accessing, and using content just a little bit easier. In the 3 or 4 minutes a user with a big job to do is on our sites, asking or determining who they are, such as whether they're a student or a researcher or a clinician, and finding out what content they're looking for can save them time and effort. We can use the data we've gathered along the way to provide personalized and increasingly accurate content recommendations, and subsequently, or after that user's visit, an email with the latest published content in their domain. That email can have access or refer links built in, so when the busy user clicks through from the alert on their phone, they're straight into the full text content they want. This is the service our subscribers and members and readers are coming to expect. These services are also really valuable, and they shouldn't be given away for nothing. This all takes a little curiosity and ingenuity. As I'm not a marketer, I have no guilt about taking an out-of-context image to make an obvious point, and that point is this. Making asks and creating value exchanges creates a funnel or conversion strategy. Through analytics and the offers you make, you're attempting to capture the small but important percentage of users who value your content and regularly return to your site. Yes, you'll still have a high bounce rate. Yes, your average time on site will seem impossibly short. And the typical viewer will still only view a page or two, but we're trying to skim the cream here. And if you are experimenting, if you are delivering value, you should, in time, see your pool of registered users grow, your newsletter subscribers increase, the growth of your direct and email-driven traffic outpace organic search. And the cream that you're skimming will be your authors, your reviewers, your members, or your conference attendees. They'll be the institutional subscribers you want to frequently download your content. This cream is your loyal audience. It is the audience that you can make money from. It is the audience that you provide the most value to. And any publisher worth their salt will know the value of capturing them. Here's where I promised, or here's where you'd expect that case study, and again, I don't have one. There's plenty of data in the market from smart marketers and publishers who are using conversion optimization tooling to boost newsletter signups or the rate at which readers become members. Some savvy folks are even using A/B testing or user captures or email newsletters to improve outcome. While it's important work, I hope it is increasingly workaday. And what excites me is product experimentation that is happening right now by publishers who are taking advantage of marketing and publishing technologies that we've been talking about in these past couple minutes to develop customer-centric digital products. As an industry, we've made good but unequal progress in converting our print products and processes into digital ones, but there's still vestiges, particularly in our product and sales strategies. By and large, publishers are still selling bundles of journals, collections of books, and the standalone reference work. These product divisions or silos represent how we organized our companies, how we sold our products to libraries, and how we built our first publishing platforms. But what use are these siloed products to users today? In my community of publishers, there's a shift from segmented product to user-centric content channels, which are something like collections on steroids. These channels use automation and semantic tooling to gather a publisher's archival and latest content together. They use zero and first-party data to target or personalize what content is presented to their users. And these channels are being developed in response to market pressures, including the need for more focused products with greater utility to institutional end users that appeal to more price-sensitive customers, that may be better for a corporate or department level purchase than for a large academic library. We're also seeing these channels used to build engaged communities of authors, members, and readers, anchoring product line expansions or reinforcing a publisher's brand in an area. These are hopefully products that capture users' attention, create market value, and enjoy commercial success. I hope a year or so from now, I'll come back here and I'll have a compelling case study to share. And I'm sure there's folks who are watching this who are thinking everything I've just discussed won't stop the inevitable aggregation or consolidation and disassociation of content from publisher in our industry. They might think that even with the best user experience and data insights and conversion optimization, you'd have to have incredible brand presence and market share to be successful at any scale. That may be true, but we're at a time when technology and know-how to experiment or pursue these strategies is increasingly available and affordable even to a small society or independent publisher. There will always be a need to deliver expert and trusted content to specialized audiences. And that's ultimately a niche rather than a scale play, but we're finally getting the digital tools to succeed. So thank you very much. That was the slides that I wanted to share today. I'm gonna stop sharing and see if I can get back to Anne.
So I think we do have a question which was similar to one that I was formulating as well. So, okay, no case study, that's fine. But what kinds of products or what examples of things that can you do with this information? Like, what would you expect if you had a case study in a year from now? What kinds of things might it include?
So within the Silverchair community, we are seeing kind of 3 or 4 publishers experiment with this channel concept. We have one large medical publisher that has reference journal and textbook content that wants to kind of grow their market share by pulling relevant kind of topical content from each one of those product silos into a content channel. Trying out essentially new go-to-market and sales and pricing strategies with that channel to gain market share in emerging contexts. For that concept of using a channel to really anchor a product expansion, we have another publisher that is using a channel to aggregate their existing content in a research area, to build a community, to start driving some social interaction and marketing list sign up as a way of seeing, do they have kind of a critical mass to launch a new journal? So these are some of the experiments that we're seeing now. I think it's kind of just a great opportunity for publishers to kind of make the most of the assets they have currently.
Another question, how can smaller organizations who might not have budget for advanced marketing or semantics technologies take advantage of zero-party data?
That's a really good question. And I think this is a place where you should be talking with your vendors and your existing technology providers. A lot of what we're talking about here can be driven or supported by existing technologies on your platform. So content recommendations can largely be supported by almost any search engine technology out there. We use Solr, which is an open source technology on our platform, to do just this. And for things like conversion optimization, the tools that are out there are relatively affordable, but this is a strategy that will likely come with some additional spend. So it may cost a bit of money to get there, but what we're hoping is we'll see enough traction, we'll see enough return that'll make it worth the investment.
That makes a whole lot of sense. So I've been thinking about this from a data perspective a little bit. So, I was recently in a situation where we were talking about in an organization what we did with data, and we often said, well, we count stuff. Like a lot of the things that we were doing, we'd get this data and just try to, how many people did this, how many people did that. What kind of other analysis and prediction do you see or anticipate being done with zero-party data?
So one of the interesting kind of channel experiments in our community is using zero-party data to really understand the user community. So are they students? If they're students, are they engaging in test prep exercises? If they're doing that, how are they pulling the kind of test prep products they have along with reference material together into kind of a very valuable, highly and easy to use product? That's a great insight. That's, getting to a place where you're really segmenting and understanding your users and developing targeted products just for them. That's pretty important. We're also seeing user data being used to refine how publishers think about or organize their own content. So a lot of publishers have developed and deployed taxonomies. They use taxonomies to drive browse experiences, to build subject collections. But taxonomies are largely reactive. They're kind of a publisher or a taxonomist kind of conception of their universe. And we're now seeing content recommendation services that combine the taxonomy, that publisher-driven classification, with end user data of what they're clicking on from one article to the next, what are they reading the most, and blending essentially those two inputs together to drive much better content recommendations.
One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and I could see where this would be very helpful information, is working with a lot of publishers. Often the context of the conversation is, how do we connect a user to this product or this content or that content, or how do we show our content in a way that's more topical and relates more to what that user wants? But what about connecting users to users? Like, what about thinking about community and understanding, while you're doing this test prep course, there are, other people doing it, and do they want the ability to connect with those people, and then some ability to capture data around that and give folks back metrics about what they're doing? Years ago, I worked with the New England Journal when they put out NEJM Knowledge Plus. And one of the interesting parts of their learning platform was anonymously being able to see how you were doing against your cohort and things like that. So have any of your customers been thinking about not only how you provide content to a user, but how you connect users with like interests?
So I think we're seeing steps in that direction, right? And I can think of 3 examples. One is essentially in the learning management space and using things like continuing education to provide kind of context on how other users are doing or frequent pitfalls. And that's kind of being baked into kind of the pedagogical process in those tools. Another is publishers continuing to adopt and experiment with Zapnito, who of course is a member of this content community. And then we've seen a return of commenting and kind of a related service of annotation, which has taken off. And that really is facilitating the user exchange kind of on a given piece of content. And I think we're trying to figure out how those features evolve, kind of the state commenting of register on a site, submit a comment, have that comment be triaged and then published on a site, allow the author to respond, doesn't seem to be working anymore. It seems to be desired by editorial board members and communities. And of course, there are some challenges with open commenting on a platform. And it seems like annotation is a good solution here.
That makes a lot of sense. So some of the conversations that I've been having kind of get around the idea that, what you really want to leverage as a publisher is relationships and trust. Your relationships with the folks that interact with things that you've produced, their relationships with each other, and in an environment that is safe and that is also, that they feel as though, they can trust what they're hearing and what they're seeing. Are there any indications, and I'm not trying to get you to go into a commercial, so I'll resist this, but are there any roadmap plans in Silverchair to pull in more of that kind of community, that needle-like interaction?
No, not at the moment. So, our direction of travel, when I look at kind of our short-term priorities, are really around allowing publishers to consolidate their online presence. So if we get to this notion of a channel, the more content you can bring onto platform, the richer that channel can be, the more valuable an online presence could be to a society or an independent publisher. And then layering over some of the marketing technology that we've talked about. Part of our strategy is being kind of open and interoperable with kind of best-in-class partners like Zapnito. So I'm very focused on that. I think there's people who are far better and more brilliant at community engagement than I will ever be. And we want to make sure our platform works with them for our publishers.
So do you have anyone that's thinking about, you mentioned the new journal launch, but thinking about using data like this to launch new services and new products, or even to pull in, if they're a society, for example, other kinds of relationships or activities, whether it's grants or, something that's very much outside of what we would normally consider the publishing sphere?
Yeah, so we're kind of have a lot of visioning discussions with publishers who are thinking about using these technologies to kind of amplify or put kind of targeting experiences on steroids. So if you're a biomedical publisher, you've used zero and first party data for a very long time to target ads. And you can actually use that same technical infrastructure to serve up grant information to, it's frequently used on sites today for job boards. But you can take those same things and essentially target potential authors and drive them to your author resource centers to ask people to become reviewers for your journals. So what we are encouraging with our community is essentially finding a specific job to be done and taking kind of baby steps into this world so that you can demonstrate value and kind of learn through the technology. Because a lot of this is dependent on having some pretty strong internal systems and processes. And it can take a while to piece that together.
So another question for me, and then we have another one from the audience. I was thinking about what you were saying before about potentially buying data, and of course the flip side of that is selling data. And so two questions is, one, do you have folks within your realm of experience that are exploring and successfully able to sell their data? And then the second question is, who's buying what kind of data and how do they integrate it? Like, what does that data do to supplement what they have?
Yeah. So what is most common today is really in the advertising and sponsor and meeting spaces where the value, the information that a publisher has of value is really marketing list information. So they have encouraged their users through asks to provide their name and their email address, perhaps their profession, and then that information is being sold to kind of commercial sponsors who are, say, underwriting a supplement or a webinar or even sponsoring a meeting kind of outside of the publication space. And the information there is used to kind of give the purchaser kind of insights about kind of their advertising and sponsorship efforts. If it is a product webinar, to give them some inclination of the potential customer base for their products. It is really kind of in kind of the advertising space.
Just thinking about that though, so you were talking about zero-party data versus first-party data, and first-party data being data you derive from residual. I would think that if I'm buying data, and especially for the purpose of marketing or promoting or even product development outside of the industry, that it isn't only who someone is, or what kind of person they are, where they work, what specialty area they are in, but also what they actually do.
Yes.
That makes that data much more valuable to me versus, we often see the disconnect between what I say and what I do. Here's this person, I don't know, that is an AFib expert in cardiology, but they're actually consuming a whole lot of content in some other area of cardiology, or things. Have you had situations like that where it's the combination of both that are really what's being sought after, or not so much?
Not yet. I mean, I think that is holds theoretical promise, but it has to happen at some scale that it can be valuable. I think there's an application of third-party data that I've been thinking about recently, which is really around publishers, pain points publishers are facing from advertisers or sponsors around viewability. So of all the impressions you are delivering for me, publisher, how do I know these are my target audience? And I think we are starting to see some publishers experiment with bringing in third-party data, such as lists of subscribing or prescribing doctors, to be able to say, out of all the impressions that we delivered, here's who came from an institution or a library through IP authentication. Here are who we know to be our members, and of course, those are your target audience. And here's also who we know to be prescribing physicians. So you can be assured you're getting what you're paying for.
That makes sense. So this audience question, as data is being vied for by all websites, retail, and other websites, how does the publisher approach to obtaining zero-party data differ? Are the asks the same?
So the mechanics of the asks are the same. What you're asking users for may be the same. Everybody's going to want to ask for your name and your email. What is changing is the context and the relationship of the user to what's being published. And that comes down to that these are recognized brands, trusted content, and content users must have for their jobs to be done. And that kind of context is really important, and I think differentiates how scholarly publishers may approach this strategy than a hobbyist magazine or a community newsletter.
That makes a whole lot of sense. And I do agree with you. I think that in the future, as people, and this is a classic data issue, is once we have data, what do we do with it? And then as we learn what to do with it, we realize, oh, we really need to ask for something else, or something more than what we have. And I think that the use cases around that, the classic use case of marketing and advertising effectiveness, I think people have gotten on board with that, and it's understandable. Maybe a little bit more in the area of product development, they're getting there, but I really do feel that kind of the next frontier is a more holistic view of engagement and really providing value back to the individual so that they really have no qualms about the data they're sharing. They trust how it's going to be used, and they know that it helps them in their day-to-day life and their productivity. And I think that's one of the interesting things about this environment of scholarly publishing, is that for the most part, the people that come and consume this content, they need utility, they need productivity, and they derive that productivity both from content and from their interactions with other folks. So I don't know if you have any final comments about like where you see this going, and what you think might be happening in using this type of data and supplementing with other data over the years to come.
So I have two final thoughts. The first is publishers shouldn't be afraid to make asks of their users and to kind of start this process. I know a lot of folks are hesitant even to think about a registration wall because it is going to turn users away or it may upset their members. Stop that. It's time to get going and I think the direction of travel here is really what users expect from publishers in exchange for their dollars, their eyeballs, their time. And that really is a kind of tailored experience. It is something where we are presenting relevant content to them, regardless of the product silo or category. And I think it will increasingly support both open access models and even business to consumer models, which we are all kind of feeling around in for the moment.
Thanks so much. With that, let's wrap up this session. Thank you so much for spending time with us, Will, and thank you for questions out there. And I believe that the next thing up is a networking break. So if you click on the networking tab within reattendance and make yourself available by clicking the little bubble to the top left, you can talk to folks individually or in groups. Thanks a lot, Will.
Thank you so much, Anne. Bye-bye.